Hi, everyone. Welcome. I don't know if you know, but 2020 marks the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which has been celebrated at UW since 1970. Though we're unable to be on campus this year, which is unfortunate, we're still working to provide a great platform for good discussions like the one we're going to have today. So today we're going to hear about the state of sustainability at UW, and we're thrilled to have Provost Richards joining us, along with Lou Cariello, who's our Vice President of Facilities, Claudia Frere-Anderson, who's the Director of the Sustainability Office, and Kyle McDermott, the Campus Sustainability Fund Coordinator. So we want to thank all of our speakers for being with us today, and we'll start things off with a welcome from Provost Richards.
Hi, I'm really pleased to be able to kick this off and to honor the work that the University of Washington, particularly the University of Washington Facilities Group, has been doing on charting a course forward for us on sustainability. I was asked to make some personal comments about this, and that's risky because I could go on forever and I won't. But first of all, I'm old enough to remember the first Earth Day. And at that time, it was kind of considered widely a kind of a hippie affair. I think people thought that it would be a flash in the pan, and here we are 50 years later, and it's magnificent. And each decade, I think, of Earth Day kind of begins to take on new meaning and new focuses. Obviously, the original focus was basically on trying to protect ourselves from ourselves in terms of pollution and climate and so forth. More recently, this has evolved to a realization, perhaps not so recently, but since that time, that there are very disproportionate and effects of damage to our ecosystems that fall often on people with low socioeconomic status, people of color, and so forth. And so the dimensions of this continue to grow, and the University of Washington is very committed to doing the best we can. I want to call attention, for those of you who can see my background, my virtual background that is here, that is a photograph I took 9 years ago at the confluence of the Little Colorado and the Colorado River on a private Grand Canyon float trip. And that's a little bit by way of saying that my life was guided very much by the fact that I was a physicist, and I became a geophysicist and then a geologist because I love the outdoors. And I love being in the outdoors and experiencing things like that. Here's another one of my favorite pictures, a little closer to home. This is Mount Rainier just a week ago. I want to give a little bit of an odd perspective just to stimulate your thinking a little bit. People often talk about our mission of saving the planet. And as a geologist, I have to say I'm not worried at all about saving the planet. The planet's going to be just fine a billion years from now, with or without us. It's really saving the quality of life for ourselves and other life forms, especially higher life forms. The microbes seem to do just fine, and COVID-19 is reminding us that the microbes kind of run the ecology to begin with. But this really is about the quality of our lives, the quality of our children's lives, and the kind of decisions that we make now. And to give you a little, again, to hearken on my perspective as a geologist, when I look around Seattle, I see lots of physical evidence for the last ice age. Many of you may or may not know that the city of Seattle was covered in about 800 meters or 2,500 feet of ice a mere 14,000 or so years ago. And if you think about that, and the fact that the first Native Americans who began to arrive here arrived at a time when that ice was receding and when sea level was about 300 feet lower than it is now. You could walk to many of the San Juan Islands and so forth. That's not a really long time ago. So the planet changes, and it changes rapidly, and it sometimes more rapidly than others. We happen to be living in a geological era of very profound climate change, cyclical climate change on a time scale of about 100,000 years. but it's good. I think in the Pacific Northwest, we do see, if you will, the planet in action more starkly than many other places. When I said that doesn't really care in a way, that volcano behind me is going to be there one way or another, and we can't stop it from erupting, or we can't start it to erupt, either one. But the quality of life for our fellow citizens and for our fellow creatures depends very much upon the decisions that we make and the kind of education that we provide students and the kind of example we as a great public university are setting for not only the state of Washington, but really for the rest of the world. I'm just really thrilled at, and I don't want to take much more time because I want Lou Cariello, our Vice President for Facilities, to have much more time than me to explain the sustainability strategy, or the draft sustainability strategy for the university that he and his folks have been developing for us. It's interesting to me that this effort is led by our facilities. There are many different areas of leadership on campus, and I'm a faculty member in the College of the Environment, and obviously we have oceanography and atmospheric science and climate and that stuff. But when it comes down to behave, what kind of fossil fuel footprint do we have as a campus? Those things are very bolts, and it's great to see this leadership from facilities. But facilities is not just sticking to the nuts and bolts. They're talking, in fact, their first guiding principle has to do with education of students and the experience of students in understanding issues of sustainability, not only at the University of Washington, but in their lives out in the world. So I'm going to stop with that because I could go on a lot about how passionate I am about being outdoors and how passionate I am about the need for a university to lead when it comes to issues of climate and pollution and equality in outcomes and so forth. But I welcome you all today. I don't know how many people are out there. This is a new environment for me to be making a presentation. But thank you very much for tuning in. And I think I'm turning this over to Lou Cariello at this time.
Well, thank you, Mark. I don't know if Claudia had other thoughts there on the agenda here for today, but I will jump on that and just really thank Provost Richards for those opening comments. I really thought that was terrific. It's always fascinating to hear a scientist talk about these things, and I appreciate the focus on the fact that our planet is changing, and the focus that we have with our efforts in the sustainability arena at the University of Washington and in our world, as the Provost mentions, is really focused on the health of the planet as it relates to the quality of life for our people. So I'm going to jump to a quick description, if I can, Damon, if you want to show the screen to explain a little bit about the Sustainability Action Plan. But I'd like to talk for just a minute about the initiative that we have in place with regard to developing a Sustainability Action Plan that really, the foundation of which is in part the University of Washington Climate Action Plan from which was established over a decade ago. With that as our foundation, guiding the efforts that we've been involved with since even before the Climate Action Plan, we intended to really develop a strategy and a process, a plan, if you will, of taking that broader strategy and strategic intent from the Climate Action Plan and making it more actionable, and to, in so doing, really align the efforts of our students, our faculty, our staff on this campus. We have for many, many years, really since Earth Day in 1970, and I remember that day as well. I remember the headline on the front page of the newspaper talking about the efforts that were going on to recognize April 22nd, 1970 as Earth Day. But what we intend to do here is establish a framework where we align the actions of all of our students that are working sustainability initiatives, our faculty and our staff, and really guided by the leadership of this great institution. What we've put together is a draft plan that starts with the strategy being hinged on 5 guiding principles that we are establishing. And as the provost mentioned, it starts with the mission of this university. We have the first guiding principles is about student learning outcomes. Then we talk about research impact. One of our guiding principles is to look at the research that we do and make sure that we're leveraging opportunities we have in the research we do to pursue sustainability initiatives. Of course, we have responsible use of our natural resources as our third guiding principle. Equity and inclusion as a fourth one, which touches on the opportunity that we have to impact societal change in the inclusivity space, which is a hallmark, if you will, of the current leadership's pursuits for our institution as a whole. And then, of course, we touch on decarbonization and the value that we will have with decarbonization as a fifth guiding principle. But with that overarching strategy in the 5 guiding principles, we then have established 10 mid-level targets. And Damon has those up on the screen. There's actually 2 slides, so we can cycle back and forth between 1 and 10. But I won't dive deep, but we have 10 mid-level targets that we have tried to define specific initiatives that over the next 2 to 5+ years, we know we want to be engaged in, and we want to pursue progress in the area of sustainability. And then lastly, from those 10 mid-level targets, basically functional areas of what we want to focus on, our plan to make this truly actionable and to align the efforts of all of our staff, faculty, and students, we will endeavor to each year have a specific annual action plan. These action plans will be even more concrete with measurable objectives, measurable targets that we will track progress throughout the year and get to a certain point. And then at some point, through the year, as we're tracking that progress on that year's action plan, we will develop the annual action plan for the following fiscal year. So timeline-wise, our intent is to broadcast this draft plan that we're launching today. And by the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, we will have a finalized sustainability action plan with the foundation being the 5 guiding principles I talked about, and then focus on the 10 mid-level targets. And then we'll have a very specific 2021 action plan with very specific measurable targets that we'll be tracking progress to. So very exciting, and I really appreciate the efforts of our whole team, and that team really extends across the campus with a lot of subject matter experts and volunteers, very engaged and enthusiastic and productive in pursuing really terrific initiatives for the health of our planet and the quality of our lives and our future generations' lives.
Thank you, Lou. And thank you, Provost Richards. Those were both very timely remarks. And one of the questions was to have you both share your personal perspective on Earth Day. And it's great to have heard you both remembering the first Earth Day. So that just kind of brings us back now to our present moment. And this is very unique in that we are in the middle of a pandemic. We're celebrating the 50th day for Earth Day. So I guess my question to you both, for this amount of time we have left, is how do you see taking some of the lessons we're learning right now from this COVID pandemic to inform our sustainability and resilience practices moving forward? open to Provost Richards, and then Lou, we could hear from you.
You know, I actually find that hard to answer, that question difficult to answer, because we've been living this COVID-19 crisis, and the University of Washington's trying to cope with it. It seems like every day is different, and a month ago seems like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult for us to kind of cope with this kind of uncertainty and dislocation, if you will, of our norms. But that's kind of, if I see a message from this at all, and I don't mean to be Pollyannish about it, but I do tend to try to see silver linings. I think we've all been forced to address questions about what's really important to us as we perhaps hunker down with our families more closely, as we give up things that we had come to enjoy, such as traveling to foreign countries or just simply going out to a nice restaurant or whatever. And to think about which of those activities are necessary, which of those might be wasteful, which ones mean the most to us, because in many ways that has a lot to do with sustainability. You know, if you think about the things that many of us purchase or spend our money on, our salaries on, you kind of start to think about, well, what's really necessary? What is good? What increases the my personal happiness, or what increases the well-being or happiness of others? So I do think that there's kind of a shock to the system here that is going to make us all think very carefully about what kind of stewards we are of our own lives and what kind of stewards we are of the planetary ecosystem. I've been struck by, I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for a long time before I came here recently, and I've been struck by photographs of coyotes coming out in Golden Gate Park and the parklands in the Bay Area where they haven't been seen in years, or at least noticed in daytime in years, and people noticing different patterns of birds showing up in various places. It's like we've all been given a giant pause to reflect upon what really matters to us, what's really necessary. And I have to say that I'm hopeful that a possible outcome of that pause will be to say, hey, you know, isn't it time we kind of really focused on this issue of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? It's somewhat, I guess I shouldn't use the word amusing. It is interesting to watch oil prices become negative because people aren't driving and flying places, and asking, well, perhaps beginning to ask the question, well, how much fossil fuel combustion do we really indulge in order to have a successful society? Obviously, we don't want to live this way forever, but I do hope that people will be catalyzed to change. I know in my parents' generation, the two great events were the Great Depression and World War II. Those events brought people together. They also caused, of course, a lot of pain and suffering. But coming out of that were senses of common purpose that I think many of us feel lacking in our society and in our nation. So that's kind of my primary impression of how this might play out in the longer run.
Thank you. It is not an easy answer to provide, but that was very interesting and helpful indeed. And Lou, what are your thoughts?
Well, thanks, Claudia, and thanks, Provost Richards. I will say that your thoughts shared really resonate with me. Yeah, there's no doubt that what we're going through today is unprecedented, and it's quite tragic. We're not only experiencing some pretty significant inconveniences as a result of being ordered to stay home, but obviously there's some significant financial stress out there from, a very dramatically impacted economy. You mentioned the oil prices. you know, I think all of that pales in comparison to some of the significant suffering and loss that we've experienced in our state right here on campus, which is quite tragic. But I think that the perspective that through this experience we need to maintain some focus on, you know, getting a takeaway out of this experience that we will use to enhance the quality of life in the future. I think there will be many lessons learned. Of course, we're focused right now on doing some wonderful things to take care of ourselves, to take care of our coworkers, our families. And this is forcing us in many ways to look at things quite differently than we did a couple of months ago. There's no doubt about it. I can only imagine that there will be some good that comes out of that changed focus and recognition that once we get back to our daily routines, that we need to take a step back from time to time and look at what is most important. There are some practical things that we will see, and we are finding right now, where we are not on the roads driving our cars, and we're seeing some of the effects of that we wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And I think that will give us time to think about what do we think about that, and are there lessons that can be learned that we leverage in the future to be more productive and more healthy in the future.
Great. And I think you both provide a really interesting perspective in Provost Richard, you commented, and really connecting sustainability with this pandemic and the reality we're in, and Lou, the realities of the financial stresses, and in a good way, having had forced us to look at things differently. And so kind of building upon that resilience. With the amount of time we have left, the question is, what would you hope to see, say in the next year, as we move towards transitioning into reopening our campus, as well as the next couple of years in terms of what where the university will be in terms of our sustainability efforts? That's an open question. So and that could be anything you'd like to see, not necessarily stated in our strategic plan, though we will make sure that everything in there is going to be included. Any thoughts?
Well, I think that we're going to face a series of challenges over probably at least the next year. And those challenges are going to be rolling challenges. For example, I think, September seems like a long way away. It's actually not, but the amount of changes in landscape between now and then could be quite profound. Many universities are struggling with the idea of, well, can we go back to in-person teaching in the fall? Well, the epidemiologists are saying, well, maybe. You might be able to convene small classes with social distancing, but whether or not you can convene large classes in large auditoria where, large universities like University of Washington have to teach large classes and things like calculus, for example. It's going to be a set of rolling challenges where we are convening some working groups on this now to try to figure out what this looks like. But the one thing that I'm absolutely certain about is that higher education in this country will be forever changed by this event. This is not going to be just a transitory thing. Within the last month, the entire teaching faculty of all colleges and universities in the United States have learned to teach online. That's astonishing. Now, a lot of people will say, well, there are things lost there. We don't want to become online universities. We don't want to replace the in-person experience. Of course not. On the other hand, I've used various teaching technologies myself, the Canvas platform and so forth, find them quite useful. And I think what we're going to see is that our faculty, our teachers, come back armed with new skill sets and different approaches that they can bring to the classroom or to the virtual classroom. And I think students, perhaps students' attitudes about learning will change as well. The one thing I want to add, it's not entirely in line with your question, but a theme that probably could undercut nearly everything we're talking about here, is that the COVID-19 crisis has exposed in the most naked forms the levels of inequality we have in this country. It depends on where you look at the statistics, but at one point in the outbreak in the state of Michigan, African Americans, I saw a quote, I don't know how accurate this might be, but African Americans in the city of Detroit were 6 times more likely to be infected with COVID-19 than white people. That has to do with a lot of factors, but not the least of those is that these so-called essential workers who show up and keep the wheels turning in the background while many of us stay at home with our families are disproportionately low income, underrepresented minority members of our society. There are also many healthcare disparities and pre-existing condition disparities and so forth as a result of that. So I am hopeful that we are going to be forced not only to deal with the climate and ecology side of what our behavior causes, but to consider more carefully the fact that those effects are disproportionate, and that the overall, if you think about saving the planet being saving our own quality of life, that the factors that are affecting quality of life are very disparate. And we're seeing at least recognition of that. I think the challenge to us as a nation is, are we going to do something about it?
Thank you.
So I mentioned just briefly the guiding principle of equity and inclusion, and I think there's a tremendous opportunity we have to accelerate the conversation that has been accelerated in recent years with regard to equity. But I think we have a terrific opportunity here. You know, we talk in terms of, from a facilities perspective, of our responsibility, our obligation as leaders at the university to not only think about what today's state is and what we need today or what we need tomorrow or next year, but we are obligated to think in terms of what is the future, what does it hold 20, 25 years from now? What does teaching and learning and research look like 25 years from now? From a facilities perspective, do we continue doing what we've done for the past 20 years, or do we do something different? I think this has been, this adversity that we're going through, as painful as it is, will yield an acceleration of that thinking that I hope to incorporate into not only our long-term capital plan for the University of Washington, but associated with that, you know, some of our thinking and our opportunity to impact social change as it is in regard to equity and inclusion opportunities. That's a great conversation that is going on in our society today. And with our foundation of intent to pursue that for our activities at the University of Washington, we have the opportunity to impact that in a very positive way. And I think we've been involved in those types of things throughout our history as an institution. But this is an opportunity that may be accelerated as a result of the unfortunate adversity that we're going through right now.
Thank you both for sharing those are tough questions to answer in just a few minutes that we do have. What's appreciated is both of you provide insight into what you are currently facing today and will be doing so in the next coming year. We're at time, so I want to be conscientious of that. On behalf of everyone really today, it's been a pleasure getting to chat with you in this virtual space, because I think we have an opportunity to kind of feel closer in some way with sharing perspectives on sustainability. we hope to continue this conversation with you as we are just going through our week, and would really like to share any questions we may get as a follow-up from this time as we go on to our open house Q&A session. But really want to, again, thank you both for your perspective and just time today. And if there's anything else that you would like to share, don't hesitate to let us know. We can probably rally people again, and would love to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Claudia.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lou and Provost Richards. Now we will hear from Claudia, the director of our office, and maybe some other office staff too. We'll see, it depends on what kind of the questions are. And then also Kyle McDermott, our campus sustainability fund coordinator. So I'll let you guys take it away. I think we'll probably start with Claudia and then move on to Kyle.
Great, thanks, Torin. I'm just going to speak for a few minutes and really provide the floor over to Kyle. I just want to just welcome everyone. Again, thank you for tuning in today. That was a really great conversation with both Lou Cariello and Provost Richards. And for those of you who may not know what the Sustainability Office does, this is just a recap of that. When we were established, it was in 2009, actually, to support the Climate Action Plan. So about a decade ago, even though there were a lot of sustainability efforts happening already. And actually, it's because of that that our office was established, because there was a need to coordinate all the various functions, programs, activities, co-curricular activities. So in essence, our office was established to kind of connect the dots and make sure that folks were connected to the right resources. So since then, obviously, our work has evolved as well. And many of you who have tuned in today have been part of the office. And so it's really great to see some of the faces and names that have been part of this throughout the UW's history, actually, beyond our office. We are celebrating today's 50th anniversary for Earth Day, and there are a couple of resources that I want to point out. First one is to go ahead and take a look at our website. On the Earth Day website, there's a 50 for 50 pledge, and that was established in partnership with the College of the Environment's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and they have been key partners actually in our Earth Day planning for the past several years. So as Lou mentioned, we have been having conversations, and it was really nice to hear him say that I think those conversations will continue to be accelerated. So we're continuing to work with our academic partners and units to make sure that we are really our engagement is inclusive as possible and also broader than we have in the past. We're also eager to get your feedback on the sustainability strategy. So there have been several announcements today. You might see more in this coming week. So take a look at the draft and complete the survey if you could. We would love to hear from you. The survey is going to be open for about 2.5 weeks or 2 weeks. So we want to make sure we hear from all voices, and encourage you to also just get in touch with our office. The email's there on the website too, if you have specific things that you would like to see. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Kyle because I think he needs to talk and I need to stop talking now. And we also want to save time for some Q&A.
All right, hello everyone. Thank you, Claudia and Provost Richards and Lou for your leadership on the sustainability plan and efforts at UW. And congratulations for rolling that out today and over the next months. It's really exciting to kind of be taking the next step at the university for these overarching sustainability goals, and a really exciting time. And thank you for including me today. I'm going to talk a little bit about student engagement. So as Claudia mentioned, Tori mentioned, I'm the program manager for the Campus Sustainability Fund. I have received my master's from UW in the environmental horticulture department, and I'm also currently a PhD student in the College of Built Environments. So I'm very acquainted both on the student life end of things as well as the administrative side, stewarding the Campus Sustainability Fund. So I'll talk a little bit about the CSF and the role that we serve on campus, some of the resources that we offer to students, and kind of, how we're managing with the changes with the COVID situation. So just to start, so the CSF was founded by a group of really excited and enthusiastic students in 2009. And this student group applied to the services and activities fee for funding. They gained support from the Student and Faculty Senate, as well as over 5,000 student RSOs. So, or I'm sorry, 5,000 students and over 100 RSOs. So had a lot of support from students across campus to get started. The first year we had about $350,000 to award back to student projects through our grant making process. So we've been operating since 2010, and we've awarded over $3 million since 2010 to over 200 projects. And these vary in size from a few $100s to over $100,000. A few examples of projects are the meal matchup project, which was spearheaded by a student faculty collaboration from the Human Centered Design and Engineering department. That program is creating an app to connect unused food or food that would normally go to the landfill on campus and connecting it to local area nonprofits, food banks, etc. So, an example of a project that has both a technological application as well as a real equity piece of thinking about, serving people in need, particularly considering that being such an issue at this time with the COVID situation. So, one fantastic project. I'll talk about a few more here in a moment. I want to mention that we have a student committee that is comprised of 7 students represented from ASUW, GPSS, the Environmental Stewardship Committee, and the Student Advisory Board to the Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity. And those students are the decision makers for the fund. So the fund is both run by students as well as the budget is determined by students, and students also make decisions about how to award these funds and which projects to award funds to. So it's a very student-focused organization and really creates a mechanism for students to both have their ideas be more than just an idea and actually be implemented on campus, as well as participate in the decision-making about campus infrastructure, sustainability, programming, and so forth. So since 2010, this program has been responsible for a number of the really outstanding sustainability projects that have happened on campus or have partnered with organizations on campus that have been moving forward sustainability initiatives. So UW Solar is a great example. It's a completely student-run group advised by Jan Whittington in the urban planning department, a faculty member. Typically, there are over 20 students in this group that are working to, they've been responsible for solar installations on West Campus dorms, as well as the rooftop and building integrated full photovoltaic installations for the new life science building. So that group has, these students literally go through the planning, feasibility, and implementation process, working with, outside contractor. They actually do drafts of the layout on the rooftops of these buildings, and then work with those contractors hand in hand on implementing these projects. So the skills that these students acquire and their ability to really integrate into campus operations is truly outstanding, and has translated into students really graduating not just with theoretical knowledge, but applied knowledge and experience. And so we've seen that translate into a number of student jobs, internships along the way. And so it's really an incredible opportunity for students to get involved and to really pick up applied experience related to sustainability. I just want to highlight a couple other projects. The Africa Now group that holds their conference annually are highlighting issues of equity, diversity, and cultural importance of sustainability and different cultural lenses on sustainability. So that project has really highlighted that global inequities related to sustainability, specifically looking at the Africa continent and development on the Africa continent. So that group is a great example of sustainability really being more than just an environmental issue or challenge, but also really thinking about it through different cultural lenses and through different global perspectives. So we work with a number of dozens of student cultural groups yearly, supporting their events and really helping them bring sustainability into their events. And that has been truly a rewarding process for myself, and I think something that I think really helps our organization embrace the UW ethic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as really bring forward some very creative ideas. I think both Provost Richards and Lou brought forward the disparities of climate change and how climate change is disproportionately affecting communities of color and marginalized communities. And not surprisingly, those communities often have really great ideas and solutions about how to address issues of environmental injustice and sustainability. So including those voices in the conversation around sustainability has really been key to our work and really innovating and advancing as an organization. So just want to really credit those organizations on campus that are working toward equity, diversity, and inclusion, and really highlight that work is truly central, as mentioned in the sustainability plan, moving forward, and will continue to be moving forward. Another collaboration that we've had the past 2 years is with the Resilience Lab, and I'll wrap up here shortly. I just want to mention that the last 2 years, we've worked with the Resilience Lab in offering their seed grants. So that's currently open as of April 15th, and will run through May 10th. And that is aimed at really bringing a approach of compassion and resilience and kindness into thinking about our approach to sustainability. So focusing on personal wellness and resilience as a starting point for building community and building resilience and sustainability within the community. So those are grants up to $2,500, and they will be available until May 10th. So please share that message and apply if you have an idea, particularly in response to the COVID crisis. If there are ways that you can build resilience virtually, I think we'd love to see those ideas. Lastly, we have a quarterly funding cycle. So each quarter you can submit an LOI for projects varying from $1,000 upwards of $100,000. And we also have a mini grant process that runs throughout the year for projects less than $1,000. So those are the ways that you can apply for funding from the CSF. We encourage student leadership. If you're a faculty member or staff member, you are also welcome to apply. We just encourage you working with a student or a student group, and really promoting student leadership and development through that process. So please reach out. My email is csfcord, COORD @uw.edu. If you have questions, more than happy to answer those. And then just want to shout out quickly to the Student Credit Coalition and then the CSF student team, Fatima, Yahia, and Josephine. Again, these are students that really, are leading our organization. And then the Student Credit Coalition was huge on bringing student voice into the sustainability plan that Claudia just mentioned. So there's been a lot of student input and great ideas coming forward. So just kudos to the student leaders on our campus for really continuing to keep this conversation going, particularly during these challenging times. So thank you.
Hi, so I'm Damon Eklund. I'm the communications coordinator for the UW Sustainability Office, and I just wanted to give Claudia and Kyle a couple of the questions we've had in the chat and a chance to answer. And if there's any of the rest of the UW Sustainability staff who wants to chime in, shoot me a message in chat and I can unmute you as well. So the first one is from an environmental studies student named Forrest, who says he's particularly interested in looking at this time as a way to rethink sustainability and equity as we're launching the new sustainability strategy. And his question specifically is, are there ways to evaluate the best practices around sustainability equity that we'd like to keep going and like to move towards in the future?
That is a great question. So thank you for that. We have been, as mentioned, we have been working closely with our colleagues at the College of the Environment's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. And in fact, they put on a great presentation actually a few weeks ago to kind of kick off the month April to talk about sustainability and diversity. And so we are going to be incorporating, looking at really developing an approach and a process to include equity and inclusion into the planning process for the sustainability strategy year after year. And I think this is an opportunity in this first year to actually hear more about those best practices, because we are going to be, we will be proactively looking at what are how is the best way to engage and incorporate all the various groups about sustainability and equity together. So this is actually at the prime opportunity that we're going to be doing that. And I actually encourage this particular student who is looking at it in terms of their studies to get in contact with our office, because we would really appreciate that opportunity to maybe plug that in as an internship opportunity. So if anything, that can certainly help fold in more into the work for the sustainability strategy. So Kyle, do you have anything to add?
No, I think, those conversations are definitely ongoing, and, yeah, I second what you said, Claudia. Really it's about continuing to find interconnectedness and engagement amongst underrepresented groups on campus. And I think there's certainly, I think we're just at the, really at the starting point in a lot of ways at UW of really thinking about framing equity within the lens of sustainability. So certainly there is room for that. And I think, yeah, as Claudia mentioned, please, if you have ideas or ways, ways that you think that we could do that, we'd be more than happy to hear them.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think you're on.
Another question we got was about the targets in the sustainability strategy draft, and how specifically they are going to accelerate the pace at which we are moving towards our climate action goals, and are those targets aligned with the IPCC report?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So really good question. So currently our decarbonization guiding principle is adhering to the recent state mandate to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030. And I'm afraid I don't have the specific answer to the IPCC alignment. I just don't have that readily available right now. But with the state's mandate, it's fairly aggressive. So we know that our current trajectory, we have our 2018 data, and it's always a lag. So we'll know how we did in 2019 in probably the next couple of months. But that acceleration, I think, is going to be is there because we have updated it. We updated it in February from the original that was set back in May of last year. So it's already happening. And I can find out to that question in terms of the alignment with the IPCC requirement.
Great. And one that's both for you and Kyle, I think, is the Campus Sustainability Fund has been a great example of a successful program that really engages the students on campus. And the question is, what similar programs might be under consideration with this new sustainability plan, and or where does the Campus Sustainability Fund kind of go from here to further that mission?
Sure, yeah, I can answer that. Well, I think a couple potential programs that are under consideration, and something that we've really looked to advance, is having more of a central hub for student engagement on campus. So we've looked for something like that potentially within, like a more student-centered space, the Union Building, that really, has some programs that students can come and get involved in. If they're new to campus or new to sustainability, where they can just walk in and have 5 options covering topics of equity and diversity to maybe topics that are more traditional to sustainability, environmental conscious behaviors, and so forth. So I think having a sort of a resource center for students, or a place where students can come and just get plugged in, I think would be really a beneficial program. And that is something that we've had conversations about as part of this sustainability plan, and something that we're looking to continue having conversations about going forward. As far as where the CSF goes forward from here, I think we're constantly looking to engage more and more deeply with campus. We are technically now within the sustainability office and within facilities. So we've been really looking to engage more and more on with campus operations and advancing, energy efficiency, building efficiency, inclusion within university planning, student inclusion within university planning processes, these types of things. So I think, that will continue to happen, and those projects will continue to go on, and we will continue to really try to refine our processes so that students can really engage in those conversations in a meaningful way. So that's, I think those are kind of where I see things headed.
Claudia, do you have any thoughts on that?
The only thing I'd add to Kyle is that our office was actually established with a lot of student ideas. And if it weren't for students, I would say that none of our programs would really be operating right now. We were a pretty lean group. We continue to be a fairly small group. And I think the benefit we've been able to have is that the interest and the ideas that students are providing are just always new and innovative. So we hope that that will continue even further. And Kyle mentioned a resource for students to be able to go and bring their ideas. I think that would be great. We hope to continue to be able to work with students, even though we're within a facilities, kind of operational unit. I think our work spans across multiple disciplines, even within facilities, but also into central administration and some academic areas. So I think that's what makes this sort of a unique area, and a lot of opportunities to look at things differently, to the provost's earlier comment, and Lou also, and just think differently about how we're doing things.
And we have about 5 minutes left for this event. And I was going to say, Claudia and Kyle, for a wrap-up question, maybe can you say, for someone, either a student or a faculty or staff member at UW that really wanted to get involved in sustainability, where would you sort of point them to in terms of getting started?
Kyle, you can go take that one.
Okay. I think You're always welcome to reach out to us. We are pretty well connected, and if you have an idea, even if doesn't end up being a grant, we're more than happy to point you in the direction of various student organizations and so forth. You can always look at the RSO directory and look for sustainability related organizations. But yeah, we're always more than happy to point you toward groups like UW Solar, the Bean Basket within the hub. If you're interested in food, there's the UW Farm, are a couple, really popular organizations on campus. So yeah, I mean, reach out to us. And if you say, if you say, hey, this is what I'm interested in, we're more than happy to help point you in a direction that meets your interests.
I'd also advise that person to start where they are. We know at the university there's so many leaders, and there's so many folks working on sustainability. So if you're a student, and you're living in the residence hall, we have SEED. If you're in administration and you're at the tower, they have an awesome green team. Faculty, gosh, I think they could probably just check in with their particular department first to see who's teaching, and then they'll probably be able to connect you. And then to Kyle's point, ultimately our office is there to be able to kind of do the connection piece. So for folks who are just brand new, and they just want to get involved somehow, or just have some overarching question of what's going on, our office will be able to help for that. But we definitely know that there's a lot of sustainability managers and program leaders and specialists across our campuses, not just in Seattle. So definitely ask where you are, because I think we have been able to see a lot of great new programs starting in a multitude of different places, not just in student co-curricular, but everywhere. Okay. We just got a quick little note here. So did you want me to do that wrap up, Damon, or could we? Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's 50th Earth Day celebration at UW. We realize that you have a lot of other events to go to virtually, but we really appreciate your time and hope you found it useful. We really look forward to hearing from you and engaging with the sustainability strategy, and continuing to work together on our campuses. So we appreciate it on behalf of our team. Happy Earth Day.